Let's go Lions! The atmosphere is heated behind the scenes at the Detroit Lions, and in the last few hours, there's only one thing anyone has been talking about: Jack Sawyer. I'll tell you everything that's been going on. But first, make sure you've already hit the like button if you agree that Brad Holmes is one of the best GMs in the NFL. Man, I really believe in that. The Detroit Lions have changed a lot since Holmes and Dan Campbell arrived. If possible, write it like this: I trust Holmes. With free agency kicking off on March 12th and the legal tampering period beginning just 2 days earlier, it's no surprise that Lions fans are eager to see what moves general manager Brad Holmes and head coach Dan Campbell will make to push this team over the hump. And let's be real, Detroit is not in a position to take shortcuts or gamble on poor man versions of elite players. This is a team that needs impact players, not just depth pieces. One of the latest rumors making waves? A draft day trade that would see the Lions move back from pick number 28 and potentially select Ohio State edge Jack Sawyer, a player being labeled as a poor man's Aidan Hutchinson. That's a statement that's bound to rub fans the wrong way, and honestly, it's a take that doesn't hold much weight when you break it down. Let's dive into this and really dissect what's going on here. The idea comes from an analyst who predicts that the Lions will trade their first-round pick, number 28, along with pick number 246, to the New England Patriots in exchange for picks number 38 and note 69. On paper, this move makes sense. Detroit could use additional draft capital, and moving back a few spots could allow them to snag a key player while adding another valuable selection. But the real controversy starts with the idea that they would use that second-round pick on Jack Sawyer. Now, before we go any further, let's make something clear. Comparing Sawyer to Aidan Hutchinson is a reach at best and an insult at worst. Yes, they both played at big-time college programs, and yes, they both have a high motor, but that's where the similarities end. Hutchinson has already proven himself as an elite pass rusher in the NFL, while Sawyer has legitimate concerns that make him far from a surefire impact player. His arm length is a serious issue, and when you combine that with his lack of elite quickness and bend off the edge, you start to see why this might not be the best move for the Lions. If the goal is to add another dynamic pass rusher to complement Hutchinson and strengthen the defensive line, there are simply better options. A player like Landon Jackson would be a much smarter choice. He has the athleticism, size, and raw potential to develop into a dominant force. If he's available in the early second round, he should be the pick, no question. The same goes for Jahmyr St, another high-upside edge who has the physical traits needed to make an impact. The Lions don't need a poor man's version of anything. They need a real difference maker.
And let's not forget, Detroit's pass rush wasn't exactly a weakness last season. Even after Hutchinson suffered a season-ending injury in October, the Lions still managed to generate pressure. Statistically, they were middle of the pack in sacks, ranking alongside teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles. The numbers might not have been eye-popping, but the defensive front did enough to disrupt opposing quarterbacks, and adding the right piece, not just any piece, can take them to the next level. Another name floating around as a potential Lions target is Shemar Turner, a versatile defensive lineman from Texas A&M. At 6 feet 4 inches and 300 pounds, Turner has the kind of size and explosiveness that could make him a great addition to Detroit's front. If the Lions use their newly acquired number 69 pick on Turner, that could be a smart move, especially if they view him as a potential replacement for Levi Onwuzurike, who hasn't quite lived up to expectations. Of course, this whole discussion revolves around how the board falls on draft night. If a top edge like Nick Scourton is still available at number 28, the Lions might decide to stay put and take him instead of trading back. But if they do move down, the focus should be on landing a player with real upside, not someone with significant physical limitations who is being labeled as a discount version of an already established star. And here's another wrinkle. There are whispers that the Lions could target a linebacker with their first pick instead. Names like Donovan Izraku and Demetrius Knight have come up, and considering the team's clear need for an impact player in the middle of the defense, this isn't out of the question. If top edge rushers are off the board by number 28, don't be surprised if Detroit shifts gears and grabs a linebacker instead. At the end of the day, this draft is all about continuing to build a team that can compete for championships. Detroit is no longer a rebuilding squad. They're a legitimate contender in the NFC, and every move they make should reflect that. Settling for a poor man's Aidan Hutchinson doesn't align with that vision. The Lions need to be aggressive and make sure they're getting players who can help them win now and in the future. So, Lions fans, what do you think? Should Detroit trade back and pick up extra draft capital? Would you be okay with taking Jack Sawyer, or is there another edge you have your eyes on? Maybe you think a linebacker should be the move at number 28? Let me know your thoughts. I want to hear from you. We're only weeks away from free agency and the draft, and this team is about to look a whole lot different. Buckle up, because it's going to be one wild offseason. One thing is certain, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell aren't about to settle for mediocrity. This team is right on the doorstep of something special, and every move they make in the draft and free agency needs to push them closer to a Super Bowl. That's why a trade-down scenario only makes sense if the Lions are getting real value in return, not just more picks, but players who can step in and contribute immediately or develop into future stars. Let's go back to the defensive line situation. If the Lions do trade back and find themselves picking in the early second round, they have to be smart about who they target. A player like Landon Jackson would be a massive upgrade over Jack Sawyer, no question. Jackson's combination of size, speed, and explosiveness makes him a much more dangerous pass rusher at the NFL level. And then there's Jahmyr St, another guy who could be the steal of the draft if he's still there when the Lions are on the clock. The one thing the Lions cannot afford to do is gamble on a player who doesn't fit the mold of what this team is trying to build. Sawyer might have a high motor and a strong work ethic, but if his physical traits aren't enough to consistently win against NFL offensive linemen, then he's not the right pick. Detroit needs someone who can be an every-down problem for opposing quarterbacks, not just a situational rusher who struggles against elite tackles. And let's not forget about the impact of the Lions' new defensive line coach, Casey Rogers. He had success in Tampa Bay, helping the Buccaneers develop one of the most consistent pass-rushing units in the league. Dan Campbell has raved about him, and if this coaching staff sees something in a particular edge rusher, we have to trust that they know what they're doing. But still, based on what we've seen, it's hard to imagine them pushing for a player with as many question marks as Sawyer. Now, let's talk about the linebacker situation, because that's another angle that could completely change Detroit's draft strategy. If the Lions feel like they can find their pass rusher later in the draft, or even in free agency, they might decide to use their first pick on a linebacker instead. Donovan Izraku and Demetrius Knight are two names that have been mentioned as potential fits. And let's be honest, the Lions' defense could use a true difference maker at linebacker. Someone who can fly around the field, make tackles in space, and help shut down opposing running games. This is where things get really interesting. If the top edge rushers are off the board by number 28, would it make more sense for the Lions to take the best linebacker available rather than reaching for a second-tier pass rusher? It's something to think about, and it all depends on how the first round shakes out. If 3 or 4 quarterbacks go early, that could push some elite defensive players down the board. But if there's an early run on defensive talent, the Lions might have to adjust their strategy on the fly. At the end of the day, one thing is clear. This team is in win-now mode. The goal isn't just to make the playoffs, it's to win the division, secure home field advantage, and make a deep run in January. So, what do you think, Lions fans? Should Detroit trade back and pick up extra draft capital? Should they go all in on an edge rusher early? Or would you rather see them take a linebacker first? And most importantly, what do you think of this Jack Sawyer situation?